Since 1971, Mr. Eric Howell has been headmaster of the senior school at Bearsden, and in the last year, rector of the new high school of Glasgow. I have now great pleasure in calling on the rector of the school, Eric Howell, to set out briefly before us the educational aims to which these new school buildings will be dedicated. Mr. Eric Howell.
Mr. Chairman, my Lord Provost, Moderator, Lord Hume, ladies and gentlemen, and young ladies and gentlemen, I recently saw the opening of a new church building likened to the launching of a ship, a great occasion for rejoicing and jollification. Work stopped for a few hours. There were speeches and champagne, and the great vessel slid gracefully away. But the launching ceremony was neither the Alpha nor the Omega, neither the beginning nor the end. Much work had gone into the construction so far, and much still remained to be done before the vessel could properly be regarded as complete. Without doubt, ladies and gentlemen, this applies to the opening of this new building today. Many have given of their time and energy, of their skill and substance, and have given unstintingly to enable the school to reach this highly significant moment in its distinguished history. But equally, much remains still to be done.
Well, the former high school, despite a history of some 850 years and an academic record that was second to none, was closed by the Strathclyde Regional Council in the summer of 1976. This was part of their plan to abolish selective education in the schools under its control. The early days of the school, well, the school goes back to the 12th century. Some would say that it probably started about 1140, possibly even slightly earlier. It certainly started in the cathedral precincts, and the school has retained a close connection with the cathedral ever since. One of the interesting features that we have in the school at the moment is the stone dated 1601, which was taken from the building in Greyfriars Wynd and has been transferred successively to the buildings in John Street and George Street, Elm Bank Street for about 100 years, and now just a few days ago it was installed here at Old Anniesland. Really, this new high school of Glasgow has been built on the two foundations of the old high school, which was a state school, and the former Drew Stainton School in Bearsden, which was an independent school. The merger, I think, is quite unique. I've certainly not encountered anything quite like this anywhere in the UK. Drew Stainton School was an independent, co-educational day school, founded in 1922, originally as a preparatory school, but since 1971 it's been developing as a secondary school. The high school club had the name of a distinguished school. They had extensive playing fields at Anniesland. They had tremendous fundraising potential with their thousands of former pupils, not all of whom were decidedly wealthy, but at least all of whom had boundless goodwill towards the school and were anxious to see it preserved. The Drew Stainton assets, which were contributed to the merger, were mainly a flourishing school. In the first place, professional fundraisers were appointed, and then after a year or two of service from them, Mr. Norrie Thompson, a recent president of the Glasgow High School Club, he took over as appeal director and in 3 years raised the sum of £635,000, a tremendous sum of money. Of course, the fundraising had in fact started on the Drew Stainton side some 5 years ago out in Bearsden, In those days, Mrs. Baker was headmistress of Drewstainton School. She took over that school in 1962, and in the early 1970s, Drewstainton went through a period of expansion with Mrs. Baker firmly at the helm, and a smaller but very successful fundraising campaign was mounted then. Dr. Lees, my predecessor as rector of the school for 26 years. He took over in 1950 and raised the school, raised the standards of the school, only to find that he was presiding over its dying days. We had the rather unusual situation where the final death sentence on the old high school was pronounced by a Tory Secretary of State for Scotland, and yet the final permission for planning permission for the building was given by a Labour Secretary of State. In a sense, both of those were acting against what one might have thought was their political inclination.
Mr. Baker, the Lord Provost, moderator, ladies and gentlemen, it was an act of bravado, almost as courageous as the resurrection of the high school, to hold its opening in the middle of the equinox, in the open air. But Glasgow people have never been daunted by the weather. Courage has been rewarded, and this is an auspicious start. The prestige of education is such that the claim to patronage of the school in the early days was challenged by the governors of the city. The bishop and the Lord Provost were worthy antagonists, although not over-scrupulous in conducting their campaigns. And for better or for worse, Lord Provost, your predecessor won. The school had its ups and downs. At one time, the ratio of teacher to student was 150 to 1. But whether the school was housed in the Grammar School Wynd, or George Street, or John Street, or Elm Bank, or Anniesland, the representation for quality in education continually rose.
I would say that high on our list of priorities is the quest for academic excellence. The quest for integrity of character, for responsible citizenship. We attach a lot of importance to good relationships between pupils and staff. Once there is mutual respect, mutual trust, then I feel that a tremendous lot can be achieved by the members of staff and the pupils working together almost as a team.
Do you mind? Would you mind explaining yourself? I'm not working here anymore, not with you. My wages are low and everything's rubbish. Goodbye.
The Lord you will have to run in the future, but you will do so successfully. But for very many of us, and particularly the parents to be, this is a day of great satisfaction, because quality in education has won the day. I wish the new school well, and many happy returns of this auspicious day.
Yes, I think the school has a very strong list of former pupils Probably the most distinguished are two prime ministers this century, and it's not many schools that can lay claim to two prime ministers this century, Campbell Bannerman and Bonar Law. Then there are other former pupils whose memory is perpetuated in the names of the four houses, Field Marshal Lord Clyde and General Sir John Moore, the Sir John Moore's pistols, which the school has, a very valuable relic. Or there's Dr. Herbert Pinkerton, whose father was the rector in the early 1920s, Peter Pinkerton. In fact, really, you know, this development owes a very great deal to the vision and foresight of people like Peter Pinkerton and Hugh Buchanan. They were instrumental in the Glasgow High School Club acquiring these playing fields that I can see from my study here in the early 1920s, and these provided the basis for this merger and the development of the new school. As far as the games are concerned, rugby is the main game for boys and hockey for girls. We arrange for the younger pupils to have a swimming lesson included in the school timetable. Older pupils, it becomes an extracurricular activity. But in competitive swimming against other schools in the area, we're already establishing quite a reasonable reputation. As far as indoor clubs and societies are concerned, there are certain slots in the timetable that are devoted to clubs, societies and such activities for the younger pupils. There are quite a number of clubs and societies that meet after school for the senior pupils. Probably the most flourishing at the moment is the History Society. Then the orchestra is coming along well. Building up from a small school, it's not been easy to develop a new orchestra from scratch very rapidly, but it's coming along very steadily. Yes, one thing that needs to be remembered is that the new buildings here at Anniesland are simply for the senior school. The new High School of Glasgow now has a total of about 700 pupils, roughly 350 here at Anniesland in the senior school, and a further 350 in Bearsden, Le Camerock Road, Bearsden, where Miss Robertson is the headmistress.
Almighty God, forasmuch as without Thee all our effort and striving is nothing worth, we beseech Thee to grant Thy blessing on this school, on all who shall guide her destinies, on those who teach here and on those who learn. Grant that here sound knowledge may be imparted and the love of truth, that here upright discipline may be maintained, and faithful service encouraged, that cheerfulness and good fellowship may abound, and that here lasting friendships may be formed, that true sportsmanship may flourish here, and everything that is good and clean and honourable may be advanced.
To those who follow after, to fill the place we fill, who come with shout and laughter, for ours that shall be still. We trust the sacred mission, pray God when we are gone, may raise the high tradition and pass it glorious on.